I am a telephone sales representative, and at the time of this occurrence, I was marketing a new service. One day, I made a sales call to Pennsylvania. It started just like any other call. "Hi, I need to speak to Mr. or Mrs. Bryan." The woman identified herself as Mrs. Bryan, and I continued on with the normal sales call. She seemed very interested and asked a lot of questions. But when I came to the decision-making part, she quickly stopped me. She insisted that I had to talk to her husband. Her objections were the same every time I attempted to close. She explained that she had tried to get him to change phone carriers before, but in her words, he was married to AT&T and refused to make any changes. She also quickly pointed out that since his retirement, he spent a great deal of time fishing and was not easy to get in touch with. It would be best to try early in the morning before he left for his favorite hobby. She also indicated that their long-distance bills were getting out of hand. She said he made lengthy calls to North Carolina and felt that the plan would be beneficial to them. On that note, I decided that perhaps this was worth a call back and told her that I would call her husband the next day. Early morning the next day, I made a call that I will probably never forget. On the callback, the husband did answer the phone. I introduced myself in the normal fashion. I also commented that I was glad I reached him before he went out fishing. He asked in a surprised tone, "How did you know that?" I explained that I had been talking to his wife the previous day, and she had suggested that I speak to him. You can imagine my shock when he distraughtly told me, "Lady, I don't know who you were talking to, but my wife died a year ago. I am not in any mood to speak to anyone." With that, he quickly hung up the phone. I have never been a believer in ghosts, but after this happened, I can't help but reconsider my position on this. Please drop a like and subscribe for more scary stories. It was my first time staying home alone while my whole family was out at my brother's ball game. I was 13, I think. I'm on the phone with a friend of mine feeling so grown up when someone beeps in on the other line. I tell her I'll be right back and click over lines. Then the creepiest voice I have ever heard says, "Hello, little girl, I'm the man in your basement." Honestly, I laughed it off and just hung up, thinking it was a prank call. I was a pretty confident little thing, and my neighborhood was pretty safe. I figured someone was just messing with me, knowing it was my first time alone. They beeped in again, so I clicked over and heard, "Don't you dare hang up on me again." The lights started flickering and there was banging under my feet. I know it sounds crazy, but my dog started freaking out and my cat ran away. So I assure you I wasn't imagining a thing. Our basement was actually just an area connected to the garage, which wasn't finished. I heard what sounded like yelling and footsteps coming up the garage steps to get into our kitchen. I kept trying to hang up and call the cops, but every time I tried to, he was still on the phone. My friend told her parents what was happening, and they ran to the neighbor's house to call the police for me. I sat petrified with a broken rifle, a butcher knife, and a baseball bat behind my front door. It's the only place in the house downstairs that couldn't be seen from a window. Eventually, I clicked over to hear a police dispatcher on the phone and stayed on the line with her until the police got to my house. There was no sign of forced entry, though we had a broken window pane at the outside garage door. It had been messed up for months prior, and my guess is he used that to get in. The police assumed I was just a paranoid girl, and they were going to leave me home alone after they gave an all clear. Fortunately, a family friend had been driving by and saw the cops there and stopped to see if everything was okay. He gave me a ride to the school where my family was. They were skeptical that anything had happened, but we did get a security system not too much longer after that. My parents both got cell phones too. This was 1994, so cell phones weren't super popular yet. After that happened, I swear there was someone stalking me for years. I would leave my apartment locked and bolted and come back to find some appliances turned on. These include the stove and heater in the middle of the summer, and I swear I didn't just forget them. I lived in 4 different places and would get strange phone calls at everyone despite being unlisted. Cars would randomly be parked down the road from a house and speed up and slam on the brakes as I would run inside. I'd hear loud bangs outside when I lived out in the country. Nothing has happened since I've been in my current house and married, but I am still super paranoid all the time. I was deployed to Iraq when I was 19. My unit worked with bombs, and honestly, I didn't know I would make it home intact. About halfway through my tour, the Red Cross notified my unit that my father was terminally ill. Within a week, I was on a plane back to the States. Now, my dad being ill was something I had grown used to. He was strong, though, and I never expected to actually lose him. I lost my mother when I was 7, and my father's lungs had collapsed shortly before then. He was on oxygen and needed a wheelchair to go anywhere. Medication by the handfuls was needed every few hours. He gained weight from limited movement, developed diabetes, and had already beaten cancer once. I never expected to lose him, and he wasn't the type to ever give up. I arrive home, head to the hospital, and he assures me he's fine and they're overreacting. I visit him every day I'm there, but he tells me he'll be fine by the time I get home for good. I reluctantly go back overseas. I call his hospital whenever I have a few minutes of free time, and we're near a call center. My deployment finishes, and he kept his promise. He comes home from the hospital because he says he doesn't want to die there. He gets worse and goes back. The family all visits, but we know he isn't improving. One day, I'm at home and the phone rings. It's an unknown number, so I don't answer. It goes to the answering machine, and a very raspy voice mumbles, "Call the hospital." It's my dad. I grab the phone, but he already hung up. So I call. They tell me he's been intubated for the past couple hours, and he just started going into cardiac arrest. He's non-responsive, and we need to come say our goodbyes. I argue that he just called me, and she says that's not possible. They've been working on him for some time now. I hung up and told my family the news. My sister and I stared at the answering machine. We played the tape again and again. We're sure it was him. That was the last time I heard my father's voice. I'm a skeptic. I don't believe in the paranormal or ghosts, and I cannot come up with any logical explanation. I still get watery-eyed thinking about it. When I was a child, we would frequently get calls for a woman named Tanya. It didn't seem like a big deal. She had the same last name as us, and it's quite a common one around here. We moved across the city, and phone books stopped being the go-to for finding somebody's number. Eventually, the calls for Tanya gradually stopped. Those days seemed to have ended, and we carried on, forgetting about the mysterious Tanya. It was about 4 years later that she popped up in our lives again. I was driving home from work one afternoon and was greeted by a pretty grisly car wreck at the turn to my house. 2 cars had collided, and one had wrapped itself around the signage pole that had house numbers and directions on it, one of which was my house number. Several days later, we get a call from the police. They asked if Tanya was at this residence. Her car was the one found wrapped around a pole down the street from my house, and she was nowhere to be found at the accident site. We haven't heard anything about her since. I used to work in a building that had 3 levels of sub-basements. Also, the lab equipment I typically worked on was in the lowest basement. I had the only key. There was a wired phone in there, and I did work late some nights, but not this night. I was sleeping alone in my apartment when I woke up to a call on my cell phone at 3 a.m. It's my girlfriend, and she was in hysterics and asking why I scared her. Apparently, she received a call from the lab basement phone just a minute earlier. It's from someone who sounded like me, slowly repeating her name over and over until it crackled and faded out. My apartment was 10 miles away from work. I thought she was lying, but I saw the 3 a.m. call from the basement phone logged on her cell myself. It still freaks me the hell out. And we've just listened to 5 true creepy phone call stories. Please leave a like and subscribe to Eerie Echoes. As always, thank you for watching and see you in the next video.